Hey guys, we just had a bunch more people join, so I'll just reiterate what I just said. Welcome to the New York City Airbnb host meetup, the online edition. We're going to get started in about 2 or 3 minutes here. If you do have any questions, we just ask that everyone please type them in the chat box on Zoom. That way we don't have people talking over each other, since we're expecting over 100 people to be on this call. To find the chat box on Zoom, you just go to the bottom center, just to the right there, and you'll see chat. And if you submit any questions there, we'll address them with all the speakers at the end to get their input. I just saw a question come in about SBA loan options. We were just talking about that before everyone joined in with some of the speakers. So a few of us have actually applied for those SBA loans. So we can talk about that a little bit at the end of the event. We'll address it with all the speakers. I just saw someone asking a question about recording. You're more than likely to record if you'd like to. We're also recording the call. I think someone has their self not on mute. If you would mind just turning yourself to mute. So I just saw a question come in about recording. So you're more than welcome to record the meeting. We're also recording it, and we're going to post it in the Facebook group after. So you don't have to record it on your own, but you're more than welcome to. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Just one more time, since we had about 20 people join since I announced this before. If everyone could please make sure you keep your microphones on mute. We're expecting over 100 people on this call. So if we turn our microphones off, it's going to be everyone talking over each other. If you do have any questions, you can submit them in the chat in Zoom. So if you go to the bottom screen of your screen, just to the right, you'll see a chat. And we'll go through and try to address all those questions with the speakers after they've each given their brief 5-minute presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. The first speaker that we're going to have come up and speak, the format of this event is each speaker is going to get about 5 minutes to give a presentation on various parts, various strategies they've been using during this coronavirus to help keep their doors open in their business. And we have 3 speakers lined up today who are going to speak on that topic. And we also have Dave Kraus from Rent Responsibly, who is going to share a little bit about how he's using this time as an opportunity to showcase how hosts are sharing their homes with people who are in need, and using that to kind of help improve relationships with the communities in various short-term rental markets. So our first speaker is going to be Anton Zlberberg, who's the founder of AutoHost and QuickStay. A little bit of background about Anton is prior to launching the security product for hospitality, Anton had been a property manager for several years, scaling a company quickly and learning all the ins and outs of the business. So Anton, I'll let you go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Mike. Hey guys, pleasure to meet everyone. Hopefully you're staying safe and sane during these difficult times. We just were hit like a massive bomb in the past couple of weeks, and I'm sure that everyone's kind of struggling and trying to figure things out for themselves. I just want to tell you, everyone, that everyone is in the same situation. Everyone is in the same boat. So stay strong. Since I come from security and I pitch that all the time, and wherever I go, I want to kind of educate you guys on how to make sure that you're mitigating the risk that comes with the change in the ecosystem. And I want to highlight some things that we've seen from our largest clients at AutoHost, as well as the general trends in the industry of what is happening now. Since international travel has been capped, there's been more local travel people coming in. And by nature, local travel is significantly riskier than international travel on parties, squatting, lack of payments, fraud, and everything else. And it's incredibly important to keep that in mind, particularly when you're desperate for reservations. That is when you're most vulnerable. And what we've seen across our entire ecosystem at AutoHost is that our average risk score has gone up by about 30 points or so across the entire platform, which is huge. And it happened within 2 weeks. It means that more people are being squeezed into a shorter booking window, and all of them are by nature higher risk. We've seen fraudsters coming in, fake credit cards. These guys have not stopped coming through units. So although you're super desperate for those reservations, please take care and do additional screening, ask additional questions, ask them to submit some more high personally identifiable information before they actually walk into your unit to make sure that they are who they say they are. And that's been an ongoing issue. The other part that I've seen, and I've been advising, and John here has actually reached out to me as well, is how do you mitigate long-term risks, right? Like those tenants that or guests that are coming for longer term. And it's very important to never refer to them as a lease, never have the term lease with them, always have some form of a usage agreement instead. And basically a usage agreement is that it states that you are allowed to be on premises as long as you pay. If you don't pay, or you haven't paid, or your check has bounced, or your credit card didn't go through, you are currently a trespasser. And that's an important designation, because if you need to call the police and you're saying, I have a trespasser on private property, it looks completely different than I have a tenant that didn't pay rent, right? And that's very, very, very important. The other part that I always recommend to do is that to run an additional check, whether it's a background check or a credit check, and to see if someone has been convicted of any form of payment fraud or anything along those lines, that they were evicted, because they are more likely to squat. And right now, the risk of someone squatting is significantly higher. People have lost jobs and have lost probably homes and could have been evicted or kicked out from different places. It's highly likely that they will try to game the system because they're so desperate. And don't find yourself in that situation. The example that I use now is that, look, we're all stuck in this bad situation. And if somebody comes in and tells you, look, I'm going to pay you $2,000 for the month, they don't end up paying. You still have somebody inside. You still need to recover the money. You need to kick them out, and you still owe the rent, right? So by figuring out what it is that you need to hold them accountable for, and holding their IDs, holding a usage agreement and a credit card or some form of a deposit, and if they're staying for multiple months, hold multiple months worth of rent so that at least you have some form of a backup. We actually asked some of on my property management company to display that they have the funds to stay for 3 months, right? So a copy and a statement of their bank account, or a job letter or an offer letter. And that's been kind of saving us all throughout. And there isn't one single way of doing it. It's just basically knowing that the threat is there and constantly keeping it at the back of your mind that any guest that comes through might try to scam you at this point, right? And the risk of a poor economy in a downturn, the risk just goes up significantly. And if you guys have any questions, please ask me. I'll stay on the chat and I'll answer them. And I'll be more than happy to go through it with you guys. Mike, you can take it from here to the next speaker.
Awesome. Thank you, Anton. Like Anton said, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll make sure to get them addressed at the end. Our next speaker is going to be Scott Yesner, who is the owner of Bespoke Stay. Scott has been in the short-term rental industry for over 4 years, and his company, Bespoke Stay, manages over 70 units in the Philadelphia area. Prior to forming Bespoke Stay, Scott was a litigation attorney. And Scott, I'm going to let you take it from here.
All right. Hey, everyone. Glad to be here today. Definitely crazy times we're living in right now, and really trying to make the most of it here. I'm going to talk a little bit about converting some of your portfolio to long-term rentals. Before I get to that, I just want to echo, what Anton was saying. We still have most of our properties on Airbnb, and we're getting flooded with reservation requests for 1-night stays, 2-night stays, of people who are clearly there to take advantage of low rates and have parties. And and our city's starting to get wind of this. And, there's been talks of shutting down Airbnb entirely in our city. So I would just echo, just be extra, extra diligent in who you're letting come into your properties. So we've been converting a lot of our portfolio to long-term rentals and furnished long-term rentals, which we think we can get a little bit of a higher rate for. So we've been posting on sites like Zillow, Trulia, HotPads, and we've really been seeing a good response from that from people who are looking for long-term rentals. Right now is usually, at least in urban markets, it's supposed to be a hot time for rental markets. A lot of leases come due in June, so landlords are putting their listings up, tenants are looking for new places. Right now, with all the uncertainty, landlords are nervous that someone's still going to be in their apartment by June. They don't know if they're actually going to be getting rent, so they're not posting anything at all for rent. At the same time, tenants who already have an apartment, they're very weary to go out and put first, last, and security on an apartment when they don't even have job security and they're not sure what their future holds. So what used to be a hot market is a little bit dead right now. So once we posted our listings, we were flooded with inquiries, and we use very flexible language in our listings, and we say, look, this is available on a month-to-month basis. You can rent it for 6 months, for a year. Do you want utilities included? We can talk about that. Really, whatever your situation is, we're going to work with you and see if we can make it work. When someone inquires, they might inquire about one property, but we say, hey, we have these other properties that we think might fit your criteria as well. Let me send you all of these listings and let's work together to find you something that works for you. So you really become kind of their go-to person for, for a place to stay. And we've even reached out to other hosts in our area when we didn't have something that accommodated a guest who was looking for a long-term rental. We threw it out to our city's, Airbnb host Facebook groups in the hopes that, someone would have something that works for that guest. We've also done a lot of posting on Facebook groups, housing groups for your city, even just the marketplace, listing your property up there. We've gotten a lot of good response for that. And really just sharing on your personal feed. You get your friends and your family to share that, and it's really just more eyeballs on those listings. When you start dealing with long-term rentals, there are some different legal considerations you have to keep in mind, especially if you don't actually own the property. So it's important to check with your local laws, with your state's real estate commission, to really make sure that you, are in line with everything and not violating any rules there. The other thing that we've done during this time is that we reached out to the city's disease control department and said, look, we have units available if you need to quarantine people or really for whatever you need. We have units that are vacant, furnished, and are totally available for you. And we got a really good response from the city, and we have some contracts with the city now who are using, entire buildings of ours to house, first responders, people who, might be showing some symptoms of the virus, but it's not confirmed that they have it. So, I would encourage everyone to reach out to their local government and see if housing is a need. When we reached out to the city, they were like, oh my gosh, there's a company like this that exists that just has temporary housing available and we can use you. This is amazing. We had no idea. So, it's really just about getting in their ear, and they might not be ready for that temporary housing now, but it's likely at some point in the future they will be. And, you definitely want to be, the first person that they think of when they are. So that's, just another way to start getting a little bit of revenue in during this time. Thanks.
Awesome, Scott. Thank you. If anyone has any questions for Scott, again, put it in the chat below, and we'll make sure that gets addressed at the end after all the speakers are finished. Our next speaker is going to be John Ann, who is the owner of Ohana Stay. John has a property management company that owns, manages, and re-rents properties in Hawaii. His company, Ohana Stay, focuses on high-margin properties. Prior to diving into the short-term rental industry, John was an architect focused on sustainable buildings. So John, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone, and glad to be here. I wanted to kind of share some kind of insights that I'm using to navigate this uncertain time. By no means do I have the answers, but this is just kind of like my perspective. My first thing is, while things are very crazy and it's unexpected, we all do have a crystal ball, and the crystal ball is the other countries ahead of us that have gone through this crisis. So we have China and South Korea as an example, and we have Italy and Spain and other countries, and then hosts in those countries that we may know of as an example. And so we can kind of anticipate what we're about to go into about a week or 2 weeks in advance by paying close attention to what other people in our industry are going through. So one host that I follow, his name is Alan Cuevas in Budapest, and he shares a lot of information about what he's going through there. And I think he's about 2 weeks ahead of us in the United States. And so that's kind of my crystal ball that I'm using to try to anticipate what may be happening in my market. So that's one thing that I wanted to share. And then also industry leaders like Price Labs, Smart BNB, who have like tremendous amount of data. They also have a crystal ball about what's going on, and they have actually seminars that share the data. So pay close attention to that, because literally you know what's about to happen and you can plan for it if you just pay attention. So that's one kind of thing that I've been using, and I've been going on all these seminars just to kind of see what people who know a lot more than I do know about what's about to happen. So, that's just kind of one comment that I wanted to share. And then jumping on to what Scott was saying, I have been transitioning from, vacation rental guests to trying to go to midterm guests. I completely agree with what Scott had said about you're not necessarily trying to market to people who need everything right now, but you're trying to get out in front so that you're top of mind when they realize, oh, I remember, I spoke with someone who has what I need. And so we're getting out in front of, we're reaching out to hospitals and just putting up flyers, literally paper flyers with my number and my email address, saying that we have 1-bedroom studio, 2 bedrooms, flexible terms. And we're just putting it out there, not because they need it now, but down the road, someone might see that flyer when they need it and can contact us. We're putting those flyers also in building lobbies, and that's attracting both long-term tenant potentials as well as people who stranded travelers who need a place to stay. So that's kind of part of my marketing, actually, like physically putting out signs. I'm also putting on Zillow, which distributes out to Hotpad and Trulia, and I'm getting a lot of inquiries that way as well. So just kind of getting out there in advance. In my market in Hawaii right now, I'm actually serving stranded travelers. And so stranded travelers are finding me on the OTAs. They're comfortable coming in without, inspecting the apartment because that's what they're used to. And they're also used to paying a higher rate. And so what happens is I provide a substantial discount from the rates that they're accustomed to, but it's still a lot higher than what I can get from a long-term tenant or a medium-term tenant. And then as soon as they convert on the OTAs, I reach out and tell them that I can provide a much better rate if they deal with me directly, and I convert them to, a direct tenant or direct guest that will re-extend for about a month or 2 months. I just had someone today who extended till end of May for one of my units. And I'm using all the information that Anton shared with you before in order to make sure that they don't squat, or not make sure, but at least minimize my risk. And so I guess, you know, there are lots of opportunities still. I guess in closing, my thought is when we were hosting vacation rental guests, we created avatars of who our guests were and tried to figure out, you know, how can we serve their needs. So right now, try to figure out, you know, what are the needs of the people who need housing right now, and how can we serve their needs? I'm sending them more toilet paper, more paper towels, things of that nature, so that they can stay put in the apartment. So I guess if you can create an avatar for who your guests are now, then it'll help you to attract them to your properties, you know, more so than your competitor. I think I just want to close with that. Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And again, if anyone has any questions for John, just throw it in the chat box and we'll address it at the end. So next up, we have Dave Kraus, the founder of Rent Responsibly. Rent Responsibly is an advocacy platform that enables short-term rental stakeholders to collaborate more effectively and efficiently in creating a sustainable future and improving our communities. Their Find the Helpers initiative celebrates our industry's passion for caring for others by spotlighting the amazing acts of kindness, service, and resourceful problem solving during the COVID-19 crisis. So Dave, I'll let you take it from here. Dave, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I thought you were going to unmute me. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for putting this together. Hate to be the one guy here who's got rose-colored glasses. I'm under no illusions. I think Anton said it best. An atomic bomb went off on our industry, but that brings us back to our origins, in my opinion. So here's my spiel for the day. When you think of short-term rentals, you have to think about our story. So our story, when you think of Airbnb, what was the story you think of? You think of the airbed in San Francisco that everybody knows about. Well, the fact of the matter is only 30% of the world, or excuse me, in our country have stayed in short-term rentals. And we're going to be reintroducing constantly people in new ways. I mean, there's tons of innovation on this call alone. But I think the real innovation center over this COVID-19 period is housing people who aren't short-term rental travelers, right? We're now building avatars and marketing to new people. And what that actually forces us to do is innovate and change things that we were accustomed to. And so I want to introduce one thing that we're really focused on at Rent Responsibly. We're focused on retelling and telling this new story, this new narrative, the true narrative of short-term rentals. If I could see you, I'd ask you to raise your hands if somebody has not really understood what we do, that you've met. People don't understand the value, the real proprietary value of having furnished private accommodations in this moment. It's invaluable. We're going to come out of this moment. Frankly, I hate to say it, but we're going to be stronger than we were going in because more people are going to understand it. And that's if we're successful in telling our story. So that's the kind of preface here. Here's how this Find the Helpers campaign can actually help you, because you guys need to fill short-term rentals. That's what you're here to learn about. So Find the Helpers is a campaign to find the people who are discounting rates and then providing it to healthcare workers or frontline responders or displaced travelers, or somebody who just needs separation, right? Separation from their family or doesn't want to go home. That's a lot of why medical staff are coming into our units. The fundamental thing is we can't just have that happen and then not tell that story to the rest of the world, because we won't be advancing our cause as an industry. So what I'm asking everybody here to do is two things. One is to think about how we're helping our community and then market off of that. That is a real story and a reason to help. And you don't do that just on the OTAs and then, you know, I love John's putting the little tabs on the like bulletin boards, because that's like back to the basics level stuff. We should be talking about the values of the private space and that sort of, that intrinsic value of the short-term rental industry. And then our part, Rent Responsibly, is to tell the rest of the world. We're working with local media groups to tell these stories so we can get the good news cycle. We're helping solve COVID-19 if we do this right. And short-term rentals are part of the solution. So if you go to rent response, I hate to sound like a salesman and plugging stuff, but it's really important that we band these stories together and then tell the broader narrative. And the only way we can do that at Rent Responsibly is if we know about it. So if you go to rentresponsibly.org, you can just put in your information simply. The one theme that keeps coming back, and I love that Scott called his city. You're allowed to do that. We should be proud of the service we're offering, but the cities and these other folks that don't, oh, what are short-term rentals? I never knew that we had a business in town like that. We're trying to get positive spotlight on our industry for these reasons, and then retell this strong narrative of the real value that short-term rentals bring to our communities. So as an example, we have in your town, Scott, in Philadelphia, a member of Rent Responsibly, somebody who signed up, told us that he was actively housing travel nurses. And these are fantastic bookings right now. And as John said, the crystal ball is that this is just going to roll one city to the next as they hit their curves, right? And they're going to need more nurses, more housing for those nurses. The time to act is now. And if you can make one of those actions, letting us at Rent Responsibly know what you're doing, we can shine that spotlight, put it in your local news media, and that's invaluable marketing for you. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way of filling your units, but it's imperative as an industry that we highlight the positive, solution-oriented, innovative solutions we're coming up with, because otherwise, we don't actually strengthen our community. If you can't tell, I'm passionate about this shit. Excuse the swear word, Mike. I don't know what the rules are, but it really is important to me, and we really do want to celebrate the innovation that's coming out of this industry. Housing nurses is the new airbeds. I just made that up, but housing nurses is the new airbeds. If we can tell that story with strength, I'll be so proud of this industry, and we want to put more spotlight on you guys. I can sing this from the rooftops. We just need you guys to chip in and let us know we can do the rest of the work. Thank you, guys.
Awesome, Dave. Thank you. And just to kind of echo what Dave said, I remember when one of the biggest uphill battles that I faced when I used to have a lot of units in Jersey City, and they were trying to enact this regulatory change, which ultimately passed, is that the majority of people in the city had a negative connotation to short-term rentals. They didn't see the benefits of it. And the biggest thing that I feel could have changed that is if we had gotten out ahead of the issue and explained before it became time to go to a vote to change the laws, the positives that short-term rentals could bring, instead of kind of being reactionary to those regulations. So I think what Dave mentioned is something that can be super, super effective if we're able to get out in front of it. And it can also help us fill our units when a lot of us, I'll at least speak for myself, I'm pretty vacant during this time. So just briefly, before we move on to the questions section, one of the things I said I would address briefly in the meetup is kind of mortgage relief programs you can take advantage of. I do a lot of real estate investment outside of short-term rentals, so I've been looking deeply into this. So you'll see that New York State has issued some mortgage forbearance guidance. So you're able to at least put your mortgage off for a few months. In addition to that, if you reach out to your individual mortgage lender, some of them are actually even offering more generous terms than is required by law. I have a few friends who've reached out to their mortgage lenders, and instead of just delaying the payments by 3 months, they've been able to add the payments to the end of their mortgage. They've been able to have different programs to work with their mortgage lenders so they can at least keep some more cash in their pockets during this time. So if you do own the property that you're Airbnb-ing, I think it's worth at least reaching out to your mortgage lender and seeing what they can offer you. Another thing that I've had a lot of luck with, for those of us who take reservations on different channels besides Airbnb, is I actually reached out to Stripe the other day, which my bookkeeper suggested. And if you didn't know, Stripe actually keeps their 3% fee even if you refund the booking. So I called their customer service and I explained that I was refunding thousands of dollars in bookings for coronavirus. And they actually said, if you compile a list of your refunds and send it over to you, we'll work with you to at least get some or all of those merchant fees back, which was pretty significant. My merchant fees ended up being around $500 because I had given several thousands of dollars in refunds across different booking channels. So, you know, that's another tip you can use to put a little money back in your pocket during this time. So on to the questions. Again, if you continue to have questions, just keep typing them in, and we'll go until about 6:30 here. And then from there, we can address the questions in the Facebook group. First question from earlier today was, has anyone looked at the SBA loan options for Airbnb hosts? Any idea, or just curious if Airbnb hosts may qualify for this? So guys, I would just ask that only the speakers answer these questions for now. There's just too many people on this call to get a little chaotic otherwise. If you want to have a group chat, just please keep it to the chat box. So I think Scott, you had mentioned, and John, he would look into some SBA loans. Did you want to share?
Yeah, let me share what I know. I've actually been following the SBA loans quite closely. It is a fast-moving, fast-developing program. So things are different today from what they were, Thursday of last week. But the latest version that I've seen and heard is that, gig economy workers, Uber drivers, Airbnb hosts are eligible for the SBA loans. And then they have a separate program that protects the payroll. And they are including 1099 workers who are located in the United States, not your VAs in the Philippines, but anyone who actually lives in the US. The 1099s can count towards the payroll that, they might loan and forgive. All in all, my general understanding is it's very generous to a whole swath of people, including, Airbnb hosts. And I would recommend looking into it and trying applying. And the worst thing that can happen is you'll get denied.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Scott, did you have anything you wanted to add there? I know you mentioned you had looked into a few of them.
Yeah, so I did the disaster relief for my management company as a whole, and then we've also been recommending the individual hosts who actually own the properties to submit an application as well. So even someone who just has one property with us, we're telling them this is absolutely something that you should do.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. The next question we got was, how do we politely tell guests we decline a full refund? Is there a way to handle this without them getting upset with us, especially if they just want a refund and aren't willing to reschedule?
I can share what I messaged them. They ask for a full refund first, and I basically share with them that one, the crazy situation that Airbnb has put me into by just refunding all the cash, so it creates a cash flow problem. Two, I also share with them that I had a personal trip planned, and the airline is only giving me back points and not cash. And then what I offer them is whatever the cancellation fee that they end up paying, they can use for future travel credit at my direct booking website, where they'll get a better value. And I offer them to be able to use it until December 31st of 2021. So plenty of time for them to, reschedule and rebook. I've had about a 30% success rate of the people that I have presented that to. And they're like, all right, that sounds cool. And, they work with me. Most of the people are going to still want the 100% refund because Airbnb has kind of mentally trained them to expect it. So that's the problem, is the marketing message that Airbnb put out.
Awesome. Thanks, John. One thing I could add, which I've done with some of my properties, if it falls, so I've had some people trying to cancel reservations super far into the future, several months down the line, which would fall outside of even Airbnb's new extenuating circumstance policy. And if you're kind of worried that people may be, upset at you, I just generally kind of put the response, I say something along the lines of, Airbnb has rolled out special policies for coronavirus. Here's the page. You can reach out to them to see if you're eligible for a full refund. If you're not, I'd be happy to move the dates, but if you'd like to cancel, the normal cancellation fee would apply. But I basically, kind of my theory on it is we do pay Airbnb all these service fees, right? So if people want to debate their policies, Airbnb's policy with Airbnb, I just have them kind of reach out directly and do that. And I found that sometimes then people come back and they're like, oh, okay, like Airbnb said I'm not eligible. I really appreciate you allowing me to change the dates. Let's go ahead and do that. So I've had some success there. Next question we had is, someone asked if we could address the announcement yesterday that Airbnb made and if hosts need to do anything to get the 25% refund, and how Airbnb will determine which cancellations are coronavirus related for that refund.
Yeah, I don't mind taking this one real quick. I think there's definitely some ambiguity in, that $250 million relief statement that was issued yesterday. I think the best thing you can do is really do an accounting of all the reservations that you think are applicable. It's any reservations that were made before March 14th, between March 14th and May 31st. And it applies retroactively to any reservations that were canceled between those dates before this announcement was made. From what I understand and from what I read on Airbnb's site, they will pay that out on a monthly basis. So I don't think anyone should really expect any money coming in until probably, the end of April, beginning of May. And I do think it's something you're going to have to stay on top of Airbnb about. It seems like they're saying it's going to happen automatically, but I really would not count on that. So that's why it's important to have an accounting to know exactly how much you're owed, and expect to spend a lot of hours on the phone with customer service, making sure that you're getting the money that you deserve.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Actually, someone had a follow-up question for you from earlier on how you're pricing your furnished units month to month versus the usual long-term lease market rent pre-coronavirus.
Yeah, so we're really just we're playing it by ear for every property. Generally a general rule of thumb is about $400 to $700 more if it's furnished per month. It does depend. Some of our higher end properties, are probably double what they would be on a if they were unfurnished, and we're really just working with the tenants to see the prospective tenants to see what their situation is, what their budget is, and that's why we're really open to kind of sending all of our portfolio that's applicable to these people so that they can kind of see what works best for them. With Zillow, sometimes if it's a higher end client, they might say, I only want to see stuff that's $4,000 or more. So, there's some properties we have where it's the exact same units. We're going to have one on Zillow that's listed at $4,500. We're going to have another that's listed at $3,300 or $3,500. We're happy with either of those, but if someone's budget is higher, we don't want to miss out on, potentially getting higher rent for that. But it really is a lot of trial and error. Post it. If you don't get any hits, you can lower the price, and lowering the price is great on Zillow because it bumps you in the rankings, and a lot of times they'll even send out an email, saying, oh, this property just lowered the price, check it out.
Can I add one thing to pricing for long-term rents? Again, this goes back to my crystal ball analogy. Basically, what's happened in Budapest is initially when there was a lockdown and everything, the hosts that were a little bit ahead of the curve got all the long-term renters, and so right now there's the hosts that kind of drag their feet. They're sitting with empty apartments, but everyone is putting it up on Zillow and whatnot now. And so the market is flooded and the rents have just, plummeted. So in a way, for me, my strategy to try to get long-term renters is to be about 10-15% below current market so that I can attract a lot of interest, get a lot of people interested, get them in. And yes, it hurts, losing money right now. But if you miss this opportunity while people are still looking for rentals and they don't know that the market is about to crash, you're actually ahead of the curve and you're making more money. So, that's kind of how I'm approaching pricing for long-term renters, is look at what the current fair market value is, put it at about 10% below, and you'll get a flood of people asking about it. And then you can kind of choose who you want to bring into your unit.
Got it. And John, you mentioned you were following a host in Prague. Could you say that name again? Some people had asked about that.
It's Alan Quavas. I will type it in the chat so that you guys can look him up. But he has videos on Facebook, mindset on short-term rental business and everything. And he's a great guy to follow. All right, I'm about to put it in the chat right now.
Awesome. And Scott, you had mentioned the city agency. Some people had asked what was the name of that city agency that you reached out to?
We reached out to a ton. The one that we eventually got to, we got bounced around a ton. The one we eventually got to that was working with us is the Department of Disease Control. And that seems to be the department you want to try and get in contact with. You can also, for a while, we were also working with the city's real estate department. That was kind of our initial department we were working with. And once we kind of got settled with them, then we started working with the Department for Disease Control.
That was Philadelphia Department of Disease Control, right? Is that right?
Philadelphia. Correct. Okay. Yeah. And, it's really about just calling, and you're going to get transferred a million times, but eventually you reach the right person. And if anyone here is in Philadelphia and is curious about that or wants to get involved, definitely reach out to me, and, I can tell you exactly what they're looking for.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. We also just had a question about how to market to traveling nurses. Does anyone have any insight on how you can get in front of traveling nurses and which platforms you can use?
I'll take that one if you don't mind. I think I'm on. So there's not a great centralized location. There are staffing agencies. We've come in contact with a number of them. They're really, I would say, a little ahead of placing people in a lot of cases, considering that they, those are big commitments. So I don't have a centralized place other than honestly, like your local hospital has social workers that oftentimes are leaned on to find housing for folks. I wouldn't suggest flooding your local hospital with emails necessarily, but if you do have a connection, maybe somebody who works in the hospital, I would kind of use your social network if you can get to some answers there. And as far as where we can be helpful, as soon as we know people who are talking to 7,000 nurses that need to be placed. I just talked with another company today that has kind of a similar situation. So I think there's these larger networks that are going to hopefully use the short-term rental community to kind of leverage our social network in itself. But it's a pretty unanswered question. I know Evelyn on this chat, it has a podcast or something coming out tomorrow. So you might keep your eye out for other resources like that. That's the hosting journey. Evelyn, what's up?
Awesome, thank you. Someone asked here as well regarding mortgages. How does it affect when you want to finance your mortgage at a lower rate if you delay your mortgage payment. From my understanding of reading things, currently, at least in New York, you can forbear your mortgage up to a few months. It's all going to depend on your individual lender, how that's structured. Some of them are going to require you to pay the full amount at the end of 3 months with the interest for those 3 months. Some of them may be a little more lenient. But from my understanding of reading things, that's not supposed to negatively affect your credit in any way. So I would think that you would still be okay to refinance. Obviously, I'm not a mortgage banker, so you may just want to double check that with your individual bank, but that's my understanding. Also, someone else just chimed in that Beyond Pricing and Wheelhouse are also willing to give discounts related to coronavirus. So if you use any of those providers, you may want to reach out to them as well. Back to the small business loan topic, someone asked, where do we apply for the business grants that the Airbnb CEO referred to last night in his 4 points? Is this different than the SBA loans? John or Scott, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, what Brian Chesky announced last night is not it's not a government loan or anything. That's Airbnb specific. Like Scott said before, I wouldn't spend too much time right now, like trying to figure out how to apply for it. They've already said it's like end of April that they'll start doing something. So the SBA loan, that's the government loan. I think the best resource is to go to sba.gov. Okay, yep. So Scott, you put up the link and everything. So yeah, go to a government site and you'll be able to get a lot of information there, or speak with your business banker where you have your business accounts, and they'll be able to also navigate some of the newer programs that were just released end of last week.
Great. And just a follow-up to that, if you know the answer, John, someone asked if you're a sole proprietor, do you know if the SBA loan pulls a credit report on you personally?
My understanding is whether you're LLC or sole proprietor, they will check your credit, your personal credit, because as the owner. But on the SBA loan, again, my understanding is that whether you're a sole proprietor, you're LLC, you're a corporation, you qualify for this loan that's specific for the coronavirus.
Awesome, thank you. Just reading through a few more questions here. Again, here's a follow-up on the SBA. Do I not need to repay the SBA? I think John or Scott, you had some insight here. I think it depended. There was some forgiveness, right?
Right. So there are different programs out there, and again, it's too much to really get into the details here. There's the economic injury loan, which you do have to repay. You're basically getting a 30-year loan at a low interest rate to try to help you, ride the storm. There is a new one that came out last week called the Payroll Protection Plan or Program. That one, if you follow specific rules and basically use it for payroll purposes, for rent, for utilities, for mortgage payments, and you document that spend during an 8-week period, then they may forgive that loan. So it's essentially a grant. But again, there are processes that you need to follow in order to make it a grant. They're not just giving it away for free.
Got it. And so, someone had mentioned on an earlier question, Anton, if you're still on, I know you may have some experience with this, talking to your rental arbitrage properties. They asked how you should reach out to your landlord to discuss, options with deferring your rent. If you want to take that.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, we, as a part of our property management company, we reached out to all of our owners and we told them that we're very sorry. We can't pay you rent in April. The reason are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we kind of gauged what their reaction was. Surprisingly, a lot of them came back and said, we totally understand. I just want to understand if I'm going to get paid, how am I going to get paid, and is this only for April or beyond? And then you can start a negotiating arrangement with them. What ended up happening is that we end up dropping a lot of units because of that. And the units that are profitable, making money, we're able to place some guests inside, and those we will do like some rev share. Let's say we'll pay them 20% of the rent or 50% of the rent or whatever the arrangement is that we could arrange with them. And that worked tremendously well, right? So it was like a case-by-case basis, really. The other advantage is that something that we're working through right now is all the units are furnished, and you actually have an advantage when they're furnished. I think Dave said it best, is that renting a furnished unit with internet that is clean right now, that is available, is actually it's not a huge commodity, right? They are available, but it's something that's prepared by our business is very difficult to get into right away. And a lot of those people who need accommodation for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they need it today, right? And that's another advantage. So we actually communicated that to the owners, and we told them, we are your best bet of getting it rented. And maybe we can't pay you the full rent right now, but down the line, we'll be able to pay you a rev share from that. And that worked really well as well, keeping that contract and keeping it as a, just in case we get it rented, we still have the unit and we'll still have the contract. And the other part that is also pretty good about this is that we have future reservations that haven't been canceled yet. So if everything pans out, we will still be able to hold those future reservations and potentially pay them down the line. So there's a lot of possibilities, and I just really recommend to being honest with the owners if you're on a master lease agreement, and explain to them the situation is, and I just try to work with them through it without wasting a lot of time. We had owners who said, I lost my job, I can't pay my rent, I need the money. And so we said, really sorry, we're ending and getting out of the unit right away. We even left the furniture, right? So it was a totally case-by-case basis. Hopefully that helps.
Awesome. And just a follow-up to earlier, someone had posted in the chat some ways that you can use to screen guests. I know you put a link to a doc, but if you could just share like a few quick tips on how people can screen guests, especially since there's apparently, as you said earlier, a lot of riskier guests than local guests during this period.
Yeah, for sure. You can actually go to blog.autohost.ai, and we have a massive resource there, or I think it's actually, just go to autohost.ai and go to resources, and we have an entire guide. It's free to use. It has a template of what to look for, what to do, what are the risks, and so forth. You have sufficient information on how to do that without using the platform. And you can send us a message if you have any questions. We're more than happy to help. If you need to run, you want just a second opinion about a guest, we'll be more than happy to help you. Just send us an email and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. And question for Dave. Someone asked, what is your opinion on shared spaces for nurses?
Good question. That's a tough one. You know, because it's super important to follow all the CDC guidelines, I would say follow all the CDC guidelines about cleanliness and any sort of measures you're taking to prepare for something like that if you do end up doing that. I would say take it as a case-by-case basis, and you know, fear is real in this space. You know, we see a lot of markets getting shut down entirely because of just the fear of people, even from New York going to Florida, things like that. So I would use an abundance of caution. I don't have specific advice. I would follow all the CDC guidelines. That's really all I feel comfortable saying. Considering, you know, your house, and are you in the boonies? Are you in downtown urban area? All those things are going to matter.
Awesome. Guys, I think we're pretty much coming to the end here. I just want to say thanks again for all the speakers. We really put this event together last minute, and obviously everyone's got a lot going on with their business right now, so I appreciate you taking the time. If anyone does have additional questions that they want to discuss, we do have a Facebook group. If you just search NYC Airbnb Host Meetup on Facebook, you can ask any questions there, and you know, people can chime in and we can continue the discussion. If you're interested in us continuing doing these, I'd be happy to put more of these on in future weeks. If you could just comment in the Facebook group what you would like to learn about, so I can reach out to speakers who may be helpful and helping you get through this time. So again, thank you everyone, and stay safe.